silent. They famously got their name for being so conformist that they were silent through the McCarthy era when the fear of communism swept the country. Who are the silent parents? The parenting style of the day was similar to that of their parents. Kids were expected to earn their way through life using a strong work ethic. So Charles Lewis is going to represent Mother Bowen.
Afternoon or good morning.
Right.
And Talika, before I get started, I got some bling on, okay?
Okay, there you go. I see.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Just like you.
Okay, there you go.
All right. But anyway,
But
I had the pleasure of talking with and having a discussion with a 95-year-old mother of the church at Emmanuel Baptist Church. And it was an hour and 22 minutes of conversation. But I will just give you a snippet of how her thoughts were about mental health. Okay, so you guys listen up because it's amusing in a way. Okay, so here we go. I don't know where it came from, but now they have it's a whole gob of people, gobs and gobs of people that are mentally ill. And where did it come from? This drinking and jealousy. That's another thing. And going out and doing things with men and women going out with the husband, and they having a threesome and a foursome, and like that'll make you mentally ill. All this stuff that people are doing. Mm-hmm. Anything that you mental problem, you mostly bring it on yourself unless it comes out of the family. And then some people have it and they can't help it. But most of you mentally ill, you can travel back. You can travel back and to see. You can count on your fingers. I didn't have anyone mentally ill in my family. I had an aunt that had what do you call this? People have it now. Oh, she would fall out. What did they call that? I had one aunt, but my mother was 6 girls and 2 boys, and she was the only one, my aunt Susie. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, now that's a 95-year-old, very, very knowledgeable mother of the church. And once I got through with the discussion with her on the topic of mental health, it was very enticing to listen to her talk about mental health. And as you see, her perspective on mental health probably is different from others, with the threesome and the twosome and the foursomes and all that sort of thing. But she also discussed about the values that they had, being a silent generation, growing up with a lack of security, and that they had to work harder because the label was placed on people of color as being lazy. Okay, so they had to do that extra, work 2 jobs for minimum wage. Okay, she was telling me her mother worked 2 jobs and was making 25 cents an hour and that sort of thing. Okay, but through it all, she said that her mental health is well at 95. She'll be 96 in November, if God is willing. And so I really enjoyed the discussion that we had. Okay. But once again, she said a lot of mental health issues during her time was guys that came back from the war. Okay. And they didn't know what to do with them. So they just assumed that it was war related. But as we know now, PTSD did not exist back then. All right. So that's from a 95-year-old silent generation.
Okay. All right. So we're going to introduce the rest of our speakers. Go ahead. So the next generation. So the next generation is our baby boomer generation. This generation is age 19, born 1946 to 1964. The age limit is 59 to 77. Who are our baby boomers? They had a wild youth we often don't talk about. They defied their parents and they protested the Vietnam War. The parenting style was parenting by the first generation took to look at their kids' perspective of growing up, and they started the concept of having family meetings. And from that generation, I'm introducing one of them is my sister, Reva Rivers. She's from that generation, and again, and then Charles Lewis is representing that generation. And then we're going to introduce the rest of the panel.
Okay, so we have Generation X, born 1965 to 1980, ages 43 to 58. What are Gen Xers? So often dismissed as slacker generation. Generation X lived through the AIDS epidemic, MTV culture, and a shifting cultural landscape that will give rise to LGBTQ plus rights. Who are the Gen X parents? Generation X parents were famously the first to use helicopter parenting styles, unlike their boomer parents who famously left their kids outside until the streetlights came on. Generation X parents have tendency to be far more involved with their children's social and educational development. And this is my sister, Talitha Dawson.
I'm the Generation X.
So then we have the Millennium generation, born 1981 to 1996, ages 27 to 42. Who are the Millenniums? They are 9/11 and worldwide fight against terrorism that continues for this day. They are also the first generation to know a childhood with the internet, which currently plays a significant role in their personal lives. While boomers may accuse millenniums of being self-centered and entitled due to their excessive use of technology, this generation has been proven to actually be incredibly community-oriented and environmentally conscious, which are traits that being picked by their children in the next generations. Who are the millennial parents? The millennial parents are doing a lot of things well and arguably better than prior generations. They're open-minded, they're raising their kids in diverse family forms. They are most likely than their prior generations to allow their children to freely express who they are and are leading the movement and helping gender non-conforming kids to be happy with who they are. Some millennium parents who are helicopter over in their youth are taking on a freer approach for parenting, allowing their children to explore and create without constant structure or supervision. Because this generation is one of the strongest generations, we have three speakers from this generation. The first speaker would be Laquita Johnson. The second speaker would be Lavelle Borum.
Bring him up a minute. Oh, he's up here.
And the third speaker would be Natasha Borum.
Okay. I'm gonna get out of here.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so then we have Generation Z, born between 1997 to 2010, ages 13 to 26. Generation Z kids are the first to be born into a world where they are known nothing else besides being constantly connected to one another through phones, screens, and tablets. Okay, and this generation is Radiance Williams.
Brady. Coming up. Radiance. All right, so we'll bring her back up then. She's there, but something must be going on with her thing. So go ahead. So we're going to start off. Go ahead. Also, I want to talk about the generation that's to come. So the generation that's to come is the next generation, is the Apple generation. The oldest, this generation is still being defined because it's from 2000. It's from now until 20 years later. There are generation kids that will never know how it is to The only thing they know is social media, basically, and they are more technical still than any generation there is. Okay, so we're gonna go into our questions. Go ahead.
Okay, so we have 4 questions for the panel. Okay, so the first question everybody's going to answer. What values do you think your generation have versus other generations? So Charles Lewis already did represent Mother Boeing, so he's going to represent.
Go ahead.
Okay, so he's going to represent the first question now.
I'll bring him up. Everybody's right there. Right here. All right, so we're gonna bring Chuck up. So he already answered the question. So you already answered the question from Mother. We're gonna
I
answer
did.
the question from your generation.
Yes, but for my generation, the '60s defined the era of social justice or injustice, and we as baby boomers were leading the charge to change the way that the generation before us were prone to believe in what was told to them. We had the social changes, we had the Vietnam War, we had Muhammad Ali, we had Malcolm X, and that sort of thing. So we were anti-establishment, okay, one may say. So we demonstrated. There was riots and protests, and we were just trying to make changes. Okay, so that's where we stood as baby boomers of making changes. Okay.
Okay. All right. So okay. Before we ask the next question, I do want to do like a little icebreaker for the audience. So this is I'm gonna say a statement, and the viewers let me know if this applies to you. So you can do a thumbs up emoji or thumbs down emoji. All right. So one of the statements I'm gonna make is, in my generation, growing up was not allowed to express my feelings and emotions without fear of punishment. So can we see some emojis, please? If that was your generation, put a thumbs up or happen, or if that's not, then a thumbs down, please. So in my generation, growing up was not allowed to express my feelings and emotions without fear of punishment. Okay, so people saying yes, yes. Okay. Okay. And then our next one is in my generation, growing up, my parents showed affection such as hugging, kissing, and telling me they love me. So can we get some emojis, hands up if that's thumbs up if that's the truth, or either yes or no if you don't know how to use emojis. So in my generation, growing up, my parents showed me affection such as hugging, kissing, and telling me they love me. Okay, and then our last one. In my generation, if my parents did something wrong, they apologized to me. So,
Yeah.
thumbs up or thumbs down.
Uh,
Okay, so we said some thumbs up and thumbs down, right? Okay, so all right, so we're going to move it right along. So now we want to introduce our speaker. She has some technical difficulty with her computer, so we want to introduce
Radiance Williams.
Radiance Williams, and she's from what generation again? From Generation Z. Okay,
Hey, Radiance.
thank you. She had technical difficulty. Okay, now, all right, sorry.
That's me the question.
All right, so now I want to ask my sister, baby boomer. So I'm going to ask her the first question. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what values do you think your generation have versus other generations?
Okay, so the values my generation have versus other generations are: we value relationships, spending time with family. Another value is we learn to be obedient and respect others and elders. We had a lot of confidence in ourselves. We were raised with the idea of the American dream. We pushed ourselves to reach our goal.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to have my sister, Talitha Dawson, answer the first question.
Okay, so values that my generation had, I think a stronger backbone. So bullying was around then, but we were taught to like basically fight back. Somebody hit you, you better hit them back, you know. And then for survival, we improvise. So for example, if we didn't have the sponge rollers, we basically was taught to take a paper bag and tear it off and roll it up, you know, and twist it and then take our hair and roll it around. And it came out some very good curls. Also, I think life. I think we value life more because it was the women and children were off limits when it came down to talking about or murder. And now with more the younger generations, it's like kind of like cold hearted. So I think we kind of value life more. And then I think stronger work ethics. The later generations basically they'll tell you what they ain't doing and what they're not gonna do. And I'll be like, where do you do that at? Because we wasn't allowed to do that. You basically got fired. But I think living in the times that we living in with COVID and all of that, they can't. The jobs are kind of like caught in the middle that they can't afford to fire you because they need you. But at the same token, they're able to do that. And I'm like, well, when did you start doing that? And then also, I think too, we have our. I don't know if I wanted the correct words were respect, but I think, but I'll just say respect for just words. I think we respect the elderly. We wouldn't cuss or we wouldn't talk bad about the elderly. Whenever elderly was around, we was taught to respect. And now, with the other generations, they have no respect for nobody, let alone, and I ain't gonna just say everybody, but um, they don't have the respect for the elderly. It's basically is how I look at it.
Okay, so we're gonna have the next question be answered by Laquita Johnson. The first question.
You muted. I can't hear you. We can't hear you. I got you mute. I ain't got nobody mute. I have nobody mute. I don't have you muted. You're not able to. Okay, so we'll bring up the next person. We'll work on that. Okay, so we'll move to Lavelle.
Lavelle Borum.
Wait a minute. So you must be. So how is everybody muted? Natasha, can you work on that? On getting everybody unmuted? Okay, okay, wait a minute. Now let's bring Quita back up. I think Tasha might have muted you guys. Okay, go ahead, Quita. Go ahead.
What?
Still can't hear Quita.
Quita, can you hear?
She can hear, but she can't talk.
You're not on. We don't see you on mute.
You're not on mute. Okay, let's see about Lavelle then, and then we'll come back to Quita. Lavelle?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
So some of our generation values were family. I kind of feel like our generation was kind of one of the last generations to pretty much value family. A lot of the new generation nowadays, they don't even know who their family is. As for cousins and different things like that, we value that by getting together a lot. And so I'm going to say family, faith, freedom, friendship, honesty, loyalty. In our generation, we was going down with our friends, regardless of what was going down. We going down all together. Some of the new generation lacks these things, making it hard to grow in an evolving world today.
Good. Okay. And he's from the millennial generation. We'll try to get Laquita back. Laquita, are you able to hear? Or me? Can you hear us? Laquita? I can't hear you. Nope, still can't hear you. So we'll bring up Natasha.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm actually gonna piggyback a little bit off of you on the work ethic part, just for differences. So like, I think that past generations had a stronger work ethic for like things like, I'm going to stay on this job, I'm going to get this good job, I'm going to stay there for 30, 40 years, something like that. Whereas our newer generations are like they have work ethic, but they're willing to like test the limits. Like they're not willing to kind of be confined in this box of, I'm going to have this job for however long. I'm going to go out and make my own way and figure it out from there. So that's one. And I think that we also do better with balance. So part of that whole work ethic thing, moving in this direction we're going, it's like it's not all about work to the day that we die. It's like, hey, we want to try to value and cherish the things that we have right now while we're working. So we're trying to figure out work-life balance and quality of life over quantity. So you have people who are venturing out, being more entrepreneurial and saying, hey, I want to be able to make my own hours so I can be present and spend more time with my family, or I can go on vacations, I can do things like that. So I say that work ethic is there in both generations, but it's just the way that we do it. It's a little bit different now. And we're not as accepting also of things that might have been accepted in previous generations. Like if things do not fit us and our lifestyle and the direction that we're trying to go, we're more than happy to, move on and exit that situation if it no longer serves us, where past generations, for various reasons, that they had to stay in certain situations, but they did. And so now, because of them and being able to kind of persevere through some of the things that they did do, we do have the luxury now to kind of move how we want. So that's what I would say would probably one of some of the biggest things.
Okay. And so we're bringing Radiance up from Generation Z.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think one of the biggest things Generation Z values is being authentic, and being true to themselves. A lot of times in past generations, they had to fit a mold that whatever society said, that's what they had to go by. But in Generation Z, we don't care about that. Like we value being ourselves and being authentic. It's also as well as being relevant. Like it's what's here right now, not what we're talking about in the past. And then I think the last thing, because I took notes. One of the last things I think for Generation Z is self-care. If it's going to, like most people are like, oh, I still got to do this. Well, it's affecting my self-care. I'm not being shaken or moved by that. So I think for Generation Z, self-care, being authentic and relevant is some of the values that Generation Z value most.
Okay. So we'll try to bring up Laquita again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Yes. Okay. I think it's something with my microphone. It's like my computer settings, but whatever. Um, so for the millennial generation, I didn't get to hear what everybody else said because I had to go back out and come back in. But I don't know if I'm repeating anybody, but I feel like we are resourceful because we have access to so many things. Like was said earlier, we was the first generation to have access to the internet and things of that nature. Um, I think we aren't afraid to stir things up. So a lot of times we may take the lead and not that previous generations didn't do it before, but I just think it's something that we carried on and are kind of more in your face because we have more resources. We're able to do it via internet. So all of the protesting and things that were done before, we're able to do it now, but it's just a little easier. So it's kind of like work smarter, not harder sort of thing. And um, also, I feel like we value entrepreneurship. We're not afraid to try new things. We're not afraid to start something new. I think we're less afraid to fail and start over. So those are some of the values I feel like we have.
Okay. All right. So move to question number 2.
Okay, question number 2 is a Black history question. In the Black community, seeking counseling and help with mental health was not an option or not offered. What are some barriers or some reasons you think for this? So we're going to have Charles Lewis answer the second question.
Oh, okay. As Mother Bowen, once again speaking for the silent generation, being so close to slavery that was existing, okay, throughout the United States, a lot of mental problems and morale and physical deterioration of Black families, as well as um, the stress that was going on from the slave masters, even though they weren't as bad as back in the 1800s, but it carried a lot of mental problems with what was going on because they were separating families and that sort of thing. Okay, so she said a lot of the problems that existed back then was because of the deterioration of the family that was not caused by themselves. Because she also said that she remembered that the government um, would looked down on a married couple. So they didn't get married, but the man lived in the house, but they did a checkup. So the guy would have to leave. Okay. And then once the government came and did the checkup, then he could return. Okay. But that was a lot of stress as well and mental health issues that was caused because sometimes the guy didn't come back. All right. So that's what I had from Mother Bowen.
Okay. And then I'm going to ask Revell from the baby boomer generation if she would answer the question.
Okay, so I think it wasn't an option or offer because maybe of discrimination. And also back then, mental health wasn't easily detected. And some would also say that mental health could have been caused by demonic possessive or witchcraft.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Charles Lewis to come on again and speak from the baby boomer.
Okay, and there was a stigma in being judged as an African American person at the time, that people that were seeking treatment for their mental illness were considered crazy. And I don't know if you guys realized back in the 19, well, you didn't, 1956 up until 1983 in Cleveland, they would send people, which they called the crazy house, which was Fairhill Psychiatric. Okay. So that lasted from 56 to 83, and then they did away with it. So once again, in your circle, if you went to Fairhill or knew that you went to Fairhill, they would say, "Oh, he must be crazy." So no one wanted that label of being called crazy, even though there's a lot of people walking around that were okay, no fault of their own, okay, but that's what they used to do. Okay, they used to send them to Fairhill, and I didn't know about Fairhill until years later when I was fully grown, and I heard, hey, person in Fairhill. Oh, what is Fairhill? That's the nut house. So there you have it. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Then I'm
and
asking Revell as the baby boomer.
I did already.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
You went first? Okay, so you're asking me.
Okay, so I'm asking you.
Okay.
The Dawson.
Okay, so I think back then, a lot of the African American, they kept things private. The families were private. It was like they didn't want to spot a wrinkle on their family. So therefore, things that happened in the family was private. And so to go out and seek help was everybody knows. So I think that wasn't kind of like they didn't do it. And I think they didn't even believe in mental health. From the standpoint, I think when I think a belt solves everything. It's if you crazy or you got mental issues, and then you will get a whooping. And somehow it seemed to have worked. Maybe not and maybe not. And then also I don't think that it wasn't not affordable. Because I can remember when I was suffering with anxiety, and then when my mom told me, okay, you're going through anxiety, and I need to, and she asked me to go get counseling help. Well, I was offended by that because I looked at it as, okay, you kind of trying to call me crazy, you know what I mean? And then just because you get your mental health check, it has nothing to do with you being crazy. You just need a little boost to help you get past what you're going through. So I think that a lot of people is not receptive to go and get help from this back then, because they didn't want the label, as Charles was saying, of being crazy. And basically, it's not a label of being crazy. It's just getting your mental health put in check.
Okay, so then we're gonna have next Laquita Johnson.
Okay, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. For that question, I think our generation may have been one of the first to openly seek mental health and also join the field as mental health professionals. Um, I think that Black people, we come from a pretty dark history where we're told to kind of pull up your bootstraps, get over it, don't worry about it, let it roll off your back, things like that. Whereas basically avoiding the issue versus actually dealing with it. So I think that caused a lot of hurdles for us. But our generation um, may have been a little bit more active with saying, you know what, maybe kind of going against the grain, to for lack of a better phrase. Like, okay, so maybe it's not just that simple. Maybe this is something that I do need to deal with. And then I think that the maybes turned into our generation just being more active, even when it comes to our kids, being open to our kids being involved and seeking mental help if necessary, and not just slapping a title on them and throwing them some medication, or not doing anything at all. So I think that asking for help m- coming from the generation before us again wasn't as popular. It would be a sign of weakness and or crazy. So we were a little less likely to do it. But I think that our generation kind of set the tone and saying, well, maybe it's okay to just go see. Let's just go see what's maybe going on or what may be happening.
Okay, Lavelle Borum.
So I feel a lot of African Americans in our generation was afraid to ask for help, feeling they would be judged. Um, I struggled with anxiety for years, and it was hard to come out with it because as a man, you felt I couldn't let anybody see me at my weakest moment. But you have to acknowledge it and make room for change.
Okay.
Okay, and Natasha Borum.
Mm-mm.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm gonna piggyback a little bit because I'm like the third one to go. So I'm like, oh man, that's what I was gonna say. So, but as far as I think part of it was the stigma around mental health. Like I think, well, a couple things. We're now more so in the information age. Like, you know, someone spoke before about us being now we're resourceful. We're able to seek out the information that we want. We can do a quick Google search whenever we got issues or something's wrong, whether it's a physical or mental, what's going on with me. You can just go and Google it and see what's going on and then go from there. I feel like in previous generations, that information wasn't always available. So if somebody was acting out or there was something strange, I think sometimes it might have been us not wanting to acknowledge it, that there was something wrong with Uncle Joe. You know, he's acting strangely. We're not really going to acknowledge it. But, and if so, it's like, okay, well, let's just go to church and go sit in the church and pray about it. And hopefully it goes away. And then if the subject of mental health was brought up in terms of like going to therapy, it's like that was a no, because we don't talk about our issues outside of our household. Like that's not what we do. We keep our issues in house. So I think those are some of the reasons why we wouldn't seek out that information, you know, in regards to mental health and working on those issues and going to therapy, and then it just being not offered to us. Not being offered to us, that some years and years ago. I mean, it's a lot of things not offered to our community. So of course we would be like the last for that to even be something that we would even tap into. So, but yeah, I think those are just some of the reasons why.
Radiance Williams.
Um, I think the some of the biggest things was one, embarrassment. I think Black people come from a lot of pride in who they are and what they stand for. So being embarrassed to even say something is wrong and acknowledging it is a big thing. Another thing was the lack of resources. A lot of things in the Black community is just now really starting to bloom. Um, versus how it used to be back in the day, like when my grandparents were active and young. And then the last thing is just the lack of information. Like Tasha said, we're now in like a more informational age. And so that comes with being able to know the signs along the way versus not knowing anything at all and covering it up. Um, but I think one of the biggest things is the lack of resources, not having counselors or people who know about these things or know to talk about these things or ways to treat them is a big thing, because we can talk about the mental health all day long, but if we don't have ways to treat it, whether that be medicine or therapy or whatever the case may be, then it still is a problem.
Okay. Just want to take before we move on. There's a question I wanted to. A comment that I wanted to make. This comment is by Robert Beasley. Is the biggest issue when it comes to mental health in the Black community is lack of money in the church. Prayer was our answer to everything. Prayer, discipline, and shame was how you fix people's problems. And then Nene Johnson said, you can get help from the privacy of your own home. I think that help is a lot. Any other comments real fast before we move on to the next? Anybody else want to? So we'll pick back on comments. Okay. Go with
Okay,
the
so
next question.
question 3 is, what impact does generation and generational differences have, especially in the workplace? So we're gonna call up Charles Lewis, representing Mother Boeing.
I can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Here's a quick overview. She stated that relative to how people communicate might affect and have misunderstanding in the differences, and that also sometimes can cause high employment turnover because it's difficult attracting uh, generations from her generation. Because as Tasha said earlier, um, we would stay on a job 20, 30 years, okay? And gaining truthful employment commitment, um, once again, is a difference, okay? So that's what she had to say about that.
Okay. And then Reveal from the baby boomer.
Okay, so baby boomers are hardworking individuals dedicated to their jobs and loyal to an organization. They realize that they need to work until retirement to sustain their desired standard living.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna call back up Charles Lewis.
For the
All
baby
right. The thing that worries me the most is that through the differences over the years, starting with um, how we communicate with one another through the generations, okay, that the old saying, you do as I say, not as I do, and that sort of thing. And also back then, way back when, um, cocaine wasn't that strong in the black neighborhoods as it is now. And my concern and the difference is every generation is getting has to have something higher and higher and higher so they can be high. Okay. So that's one of my concerns. And also, I agree with Lavelle that at his age, I discovered that I had an issue, that my serotonin levels were low. So I started taking Wellbutrin, okay, which leveled me out. Okay. That made me comfortable enough to understand that I did have a problem, and it wasn't my fault that I had this problem. Okay. But once again, in the workplace, there's different generations working together. There's a chance for conflict due to attitudes when people have mental health issues and different age groups. So once again, you don't want to get stereotyped that something, don't talk to him because he's crazy. Okay, he's a hothead. But it's all mental health issues that has not been addressed.
Okay.
Okay, Talita Dawson.
So the impact I think is the differences. I think with the newer generations now, they're not like I'm not working for, I'm not working for other people. I'm going to work for myself. So they do have that entrepreneur mind to where we were taught, okay, go to work, do your 30 years and retire. And we're like kind of like shame on the ones that's entrepreneur because it's like you're gonna be working the rest of your life. But I think if you put your money away and do things appropriately, I think you can benefit from it. So I think that's the difference between the workforce.
Okay, Laquita Johnson.
Okay, so I think the generational differences, specifically with our generation, our demand on our employers are different. Whereas before it would be like, okay, similar to what Lily said, go in, do your 30 and get out. Now it's kind of like, okay, as an employee, I expect more from you as my employer. So we put a demand on our employers as far as ethics. We put a demand on our employers as far as um, salary fairness, equality in the workplace, just to name a few things. Um, I feel like there's also a difference from the employer side on us as far as education requirements. So before you could get a job without a high school diploma, you just go sign up and you start work today. Whereas now they require you to have educational background and or experience. Um, and because of that, because they put that demand on us, we then hold them accountable to make sure that we are in a safe work environment, to make sure that we hold our coworkers accountable for the things that they do and say. You can't just call us anything or treat us any type of way. So I think that our generation kind of started that evolution, and then if we're not getting what we want from our employer, then we step out and say, hey, I'll just go do my own thing. So I think that we're more open to that dynamic, whereas the generations prior to us kind of grin and bear it.
Okay, Lavelle Borum.
So our generational differences, I kind of feel like it was the work ethic. We're probably the end of being able to have a work ethic. We were taught by our parents to pretty much have a work ethic, some type of work ethic. So I feel like in some cases today that it's a lot of people that they look at the technology and they're looking for a way around things instead of us. We had no way around it. We had to figure out how to do it, and we had to figure out how to do it with a work ethic. I think that's pretty much the difference in the technology difference and what's going on today.
Okay, Natasha Borum.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier regarding the work ethic, but I think generations ago too, like I don't think jobs, were necessarily as plentiful, or at least good jobs, the jobs that you want to stay at for, 30, 40, 50 years. And so when you get one of those jobs, you hold on for dear life and you stay there and, do what you need to do. Whereas now I think our generation, we have more emphasis on, as mentioned earlier, self-care, your mental sanity. So we're not just going to put up with a job for 30 and 40 years just for the sake of having a quote unquote good job. If we're not feeling like we're being treated well, the times we'll take a lesser paying job just to not deal with what comes with, a higher paying job. And then also I think, like there was a guy that I used to work with, he retired, worked probably like 40 years, and he retired, and like few days later, bought this nice sports car. He had all these plans with him and his wife. They were going to travel. They were going to do all these things. Finally, after working all of these years, a week later, he died. He fell down the stairs or something and passed away. And that kind of, in my head, was just like, yeah, I'm not going to wait until after 30, 40 years to start living life and start enjoying life and doing the things that I want to do. So I think that I'm also seeing that with our generation and generations to come, the whole quality of life, work-life balance. I'm going to enjoy my life in between. I'm going to work because I need to work, because I need to get money to afford the life that I'm trying to live. But I'm not willing to risk my mental sanity. I need to take care of myself. And those are the things that are most high on our importance list than previously. So that's what I think the difference are.
Okay.
Radiance.
I think the biggest thing, especially for Generation Z, because I actually live this day to day. A lot of the people that I work with in my profession, they've been at my place of work for some of them longer than I've been alive. And I always question and ask, like, what made you stay here for 20 plus years? Because me coming in, viewing it like, I can go and go get another job real quick. I think the value has changed in employment. Generation Z values their time more than anything. Whereas older generations may say, okay, well, I value my time, but I still need to get this money. So that's the goal. The goal is to get paid. The goal is this. The goal is that. Whereas me is like, oh, I'm gonna get paid, but my time and what I'm doing is way more important than just getting paid. So the value in that, especially in the workplace, which is something that I've struggled with. I definitely can't say, because a lot of people like to say our generation is lazy, and I don't think that we're lazy. I just think that it's we can quickly move on. We don't have to ponder on that and say, I feel like I can be more efficient doing something this way versus this way. I think in the workplace where generations, because I also deal with this, battle is it's a misunderstanding of what we value, or why we may think the way we think. So an older generation may think the way a Generation Z do something is problematic, versus Generation Z may say, well, why has it always been the same? And I think we could come together and stop having a tug of war if we took the time to appreciate, well, they value this and this is why they do that, and I understand, versus us just always having problems. Because when I tell you I deal with this is big for my generation, and I deal with older generations every single day in my profession. The value is where it really is. Like, we don't appreciate each other and what we both bring to the table as different generations. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're moving to our final question. We are going to get to some of the comments, but let's move to our final question.
Okay, so question 4 is, do you think there was an impact on the child because of not being allowed to express their emotions? And if so, what may have been the impact? So we're going to have Charles Lewis, who represented Mother Bowen.
All right. Well, once again, she said it was common to always hear, if you do wrong, I'm gonna go outside and get a switch, okay? Or I'm gonna send you outside and get a switch, okay?
Right.
And it was better for you to get the switch, as she said, than for her to go out, because she'll come back with the treat, okay? But it was common for the children emotions to be dismissed, because that's what the parents did back then, okay? But she learned a lesson which made her a better parent, okay? And as you said, the most non-quoted scripture that you hear, that famous one, do as I say and not as I do. And she said the other one, God don't like ugly, okay? She said, I used to hear that so much, and I started looking for it in the Bible, but it never was in the Bible. So once again, it was lack of communication, okay? Because what they said was law,
Mm, okay. So Revelle.
So I said yes to a certain extent because you couldn't express how you felt if you were in a bad mood or something was just on your mind and you wasn't allowed to pout or be sad. Because they would say if you did pout, they would say fix your mouth or your face. You kind of kept a lot of things inside. And I think also later that can affect you. Also, we were raised to do what you were told, just like Chuck just said. And you were afraid of your parents. And if you said or did something wrong, you got punished or you got a whooping.
Correct. You're absolutely right. Um, I had the luxury living with my grandmother from the age of 6 to 10, and I was traumatized. Okay, to this day, I remember. Okay, right, exactly. But it was about do as I say. Okay, that's it. So I never heard um, you could say I love you, and you got back me too. You know, what was me too? Okay, I'm showing you my love. I'm showing you my emotions, and you come back with a me too. Okay, so to this day, I tell my children I love them, okay, and other. I tell Talitha, I talk to, hey, I love you, that sort of thing. So you have to get over what happened in the past because once again, it was always if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about, okay, and that sort of thing. So um, you have to be better. You have to be better. You have to let a child be a child and let them speak their mind because we generation baby boomers created because we wanted our children to have more than what we had. Okay, so we gave them leeway.
Okay. All right. Talitha Dawson.
So I think yeah, there were several impacts. I think in school, some kids were shy, where they didn't want to get up in front of the audience and and like in talk when there was time to basically talk in front of people. I think it kind of made them shy because basically you were taught it was kind of like kids should be seen and not heard. um, and then also I think it could probably affect like generations down the road, like when they, get grown and get, they're afraid to like express their feeling and really express how they feel. Like they don't want to express, okay, I love you. They don't want to express that because they were always taught not to express those emotions. And then I think also too that I think like the millennials on down, I think they're because they kind of experience, that trauma too, or whatever you may call it. I think they lashing out more. And so they're like, hey, you respect me, I respect you. It ain't about no respect on one way. It's about respect, and I think it's because they got tired of not being able to show their emotions, so they're sharing their emotions now. And it's like basically you got a whooping, but you weren't allowed to cry. It's like okay, but if you're hurting, how come you can't cry? And things like that.
Okay. Lakuta Johnson.
So I said that I think that a child being taught not to throw a tantrum as a part of expressing themselves makes sense. So saying that it's not okay for your kid to stump away from you or be disrespectful, absolutely. Like, no, that's not okay. However, I think that it is important to create a space where they're comfortable to express themselves and say, you know what, if you feel so I'm going through this with my 6 year old right now. Like this is our biggest issue right now. Um, anybody who knows my baby knows he's a sweet kid, and but when he gets mad, things switch up. So I am trying to teach him like it's okay to say that you feel some type of way. It's okay to say that you sad. It's okay to express yourself, but you cannot throw a tantrum. You cannot overreact. As adults, we have to learn how to reel it in. So a lot of times there may be something going on where I want to just, especially being pregnant, I want to throw up my hands, kick, scream, yell, holler, and but you can't do that. So as a part of raising a child, you have to explain to them that it's okay to express yourself, but it's a way to go about it. So it's not always what you do, but how you do it. So if you want to communicate something, if you really want somebody to understand where you're coming from and how you feel, then you need to communicate with that person in a manner where they understand. The moment where you start throwing tantrums, kicking, screaming, yelling, hollering, stumping away, then now you put up a barrier in that communication, because as a parent, I'm like, I wish you would. And then as a child, you just like, I just want you to hear me. So, but nobody's listening. So I think that it's just important as parents to develop or create a safe space for your child to communicate with you and tell you how they feel, but still keeping their respect intact.
Okay, Lavelle Borum.
I'm gonna say no, because I feel it's a positive way to show your emotions without a negative response. Um, for a kid, you don't have to act out um, in order to get what you want, or show someone that you're feeling some type of way. Um, I feel that is a lot of different ways that you can show that without showing, without pouting, without having a tantrum. Um, when it came down to my generation, I still think that we were one of the last generations where you couldn't do that, or you would be getting a whooping or some sort of a punishment. But so I do think um, that it is a positive way to be able to show um, these things without acting out.
Okay.
Natasha Borum.
Yeah, say our first and last name every time. But honestly, I think they got it. But I was waiting. So I think the impacts are lack of self-confidence, poor communication skills, inability to manage their emotions. I think when we two, I think Quita mentioned it about like you want your kids to be expressive, but I think of course it's within reason. We don't want to enable them, but at the same time, I think your job as a parent, like the whole kids should be seen and not heard type of thing, I think that really has had a negative impact on us, and we see it play out as adults, and we see it play out in other people and other people's kids as adults. I think our job is we're looking at tiny human beings at the end of the day. They're not just these little people that we're bigger than and we can disrespect and talk to any kind of way and whatever. Like they're literally tiny human beings. And though we may get to a point where we can manage our emotions, we had to learn. That's a process. So just imagine a little 5-year-old, he's feeling all of these different things. Your job as a parent is to help him navigate through that, help him manage that. Like, what do I do with all these emotions? What do I do with all of these feelings? How do I, so if you don't allow your kids to be expressive, then they find other ways to show it and act out. And we see it play out in our adults and unfortunately in our Black men as they get older, when they did not have an outlet to express themselves. They have a passive aggressive way of doing it, or they act out in an aggressive way because they never had that outlet growing up. They never had a space where they could share. They never had a safe space within their household and their parents to be able to, if they were to act out in a certain way, you can be the parent to say, hey, let's talk about this. What's going on with you? Why are you acting this way? Why are you sad? Why are you mad? What is going on with you right now? And help them self-regulate. We didn't have that. So we see all kinds of stuff going on these days. So I don't think that expression necessarily means negative. It's just how you manage it, how you teach your kids how to manage theirs. Because they're just not born with that quality. That's what parents are for. So, but that's all.
Okay, Radiant Williams.
Full government name. Okay. I think when it comes to children, I think about the way my mom raised me. If anyone knew me when I was younger, I mean, I'm still the same way. I have a very bold personality, and I just always felt like regardless if you were an adult or a child, I always felt like if I'm respecting you, then you should also give me that respect back. And I think of the scripture in Ephesians that says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in discipline and instruction." And it tells us right there, like we can't on one hand discipline a child and have them feel all these emotions, but then on the other hand, don't instruct them on ways to manage those emotions. One of the biggest things I do with my own daughter, because she'll tell you, like, if she get in trouble, she'll be like, "You made me cry and I'm feeling this way." But I appreciate the fact that I give her that space to communicate those emotions. But we also, because there's a fine line between those emotions being communicated and then becoming disrespectful. We don't cross that line. We don't do that. So being able to balance and know that there is a fine gray area between managing and expressing those emotions versus becoming disrespectful and out of line as a child. But I think it's very important. One thing I appreciated about my mom is that she did allow me to express myself without being disrespectful to her, but also her to fully understand me and have an outlet. Because if I didn't have that outlet, I would have ended up like a lot of my classmates that I went to school with, doing other things because I didn't have anyone to say, "Hey, what's wrong? How can we manage this? What is the problem? And how can we fix it?" I think in older generations, they felt that was a level of disrespect because you told them how you felt. And I think a lot of it dealt with how you said it versus what you were saying. But I think especially for Generation Z, they value that, like having that safe space to say, "This is how I'm feeling." And it's not that you're trying to attack me when I tell you how I feel, but you're listening to understand how I feel and how we can move forward to manage that. So as a parent, I definitely value not provoking my child, but also helping her guide her through those emotions, because sometimes you can wake up and feel a certain type of way and not really know how to express that. And as a tiny human, they do that a lot. They cry when they sleepy, they cry when they hungry, but if they understand the differences between those cries like adults do, then they'll know how to communicate and be effective and you know balance those emotions. So definitely,
Just
definitely.
just a quick question to you, Radiance. What do you mean by like crossing a line of disrespect? Like, at what point do you think that it becomes disrespectful?
So prime example, I mean, you guys on the live may know my mom, but for those who don't know her, she's very boisterous. And she don't play disrespect at all. Like, and I remember a particular time she had said something and it kind of hurt my feelings. And I was just like, "Oh, you're rude." And I said it just like that. If you see my face, I said it just like that. And before I knew it, she hit me. Like, it was the quickest thing. It happened so fast. And I wasn't, and then later on, I was like, I wasn't saying like you was just like, I wasn't trying to say it. It came off disrespectful. My intent was to just tell you, like, that hurt my feelings. That was rude to me, but my impact was disrespectful to you. So I think understanding that what you may intend to say can cause a different impact in the way you say it. So the heightening your voice, your hand gestures, I make a lot of facial expressions when I talk. So I understand, like as an adult now, I understand how certain things can be disrespectful and cross over the line, because it is a fine line between respect and disrespect. An older person, you may say something one way and you feel like, I was just saying it, just, wasn't nothing, your intent wasn't nothing disrespectful behind it, but the way they received it was disrespectful coming from you. And a lot of times I got that as a young girl, like, "Oh, you're too young to be saying that," or "Why are you saying it like that?" It wasn't that I was trying to be disrespectful. It was just, that's just how it kind of came out. So how you say things can cross over that disrespect line, that it's imaginary, but people, you know, they see it, or whatever you want to say.
Okay. Okay, great. So I'm just gonna go to the audience. I know we did have a bonus question, but I know we're like way over like a because we like to try to keep it within like an hour, and so we're like 20 minutes over, and we're gonna probably do this segment in like a part 2, part 3 because it's just so much to it. But I do want to just reach out to the audience real fast. I see. Okay, so one of the things that Robert Beasley said that I'm gonna show his. Is it coming up? His comment was, okay, so we already read that one already. Okay, so the next one was Nini said that you can get help from that. We already shared that one. Okay, let me go to the next one. Sorry. Robert put up that to this day, my grandmother's solutions to every problem is to pray about it, and we now know that this doesn't fix everything. Like if Uncle Joe was touching little girls, and then he went on to say that he don't have an Uncle Joe. He was just giving that as an example, y'all. Okay. And then Dee said that the older generations are grandfathered in, but now they raise the retirement age. So this is the question with the work ethics in the younger generation. And then Nini went on to say that work-life balance is the biggest thing for our generation. I work hard daily so I can do what I love most on my days off. Robert went on and said that Gen Z is a combination of all the generations before them traumas. Laugh out loud. Every generations before Gen Z said how they weren't going to be the kind of parent they were raised by, but ended up being very similar to those lot of ways, and that's true. I agree with that. And then Dee just was thanking everybody, and again, please comment, like, and share. And then Radiance was just calling the question. I guess someone didn't understand the question. And then Nene just said she don't think those ways were shown to our generation, so it's up to us to show and demonstrate it, and that's true. And then Robert went on to say Gen Z. Oh, that's the same one, right? Okay, he must have said it twice. Um, Dee said, "Thank you for your likes, Nene." Okay, thank you for your support. That's our moderator. Nene went on to say, "I'm getting to it. How you say things goes a long way without someone receiving." And I think that's one of the things that Radiance touched on. Gina said, "Good word, Radiance." And then Nene said, "This is all good." And then Alyssa said, this was such a good conversation. Great. I mean, it was something that needed to be said, you know. And Shalisha said, thanks, everyone. All right. So, like I said, again, it's going to be a part 2 with more questions and more into, into dealing with these generational traumas and things like that. I think this is a platform for us to come and be able to talk about a lot of things. Robert said, I'm about to get my mama on this. All right. Don't get beat up, Robert. Okay. Say, I was on. No. I'm just joking. All right. So what's the next thing? So we all want to end with a positive. So we're winding down, ending, and so we're going to start with Chuck saying something positive. Wait, there you go. Oh, we should have said our next segment first, huh? Chuck,
Yes,
yep,
dear.
yep,
Yes,
you have some
dear.
positive
Yes,
you
dear.
want to say?
Sure. Um, we all have our issues and we all will handle them different, but we all must remember just respect the next person as much as you want to be respected. Okay. Because you never know. You never know. You know, it was a song that was out. What if, you know, God was one of us, just someone walking alongside of us. You never know who may need your help or your kind words. Okay. And so that's all I have to say. But it's been a pleasure being a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're gonna welcome you back in. Okay. Ravel,
So I just want to say, real simple, life is what you make of it.
and actually I wanted you to say that last. You last. Okay. Next I'm gonna bring up Quita.
So my positive note is The beauty of evolution is growth. When we allow room for growth, we gain understanding. And when you know better, you do better.
Okay, and then Lavelle.
So for me, my ending, you don't have to struggle in silence. Also, I want to say, remember, comparison is the thief of all joy.
Okay. Natasha. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip somebody? No, you're next.
I was looking like, who she skipped?
Okay.
um,
Did I get Queen?
So-
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I think I did. So, so I would just say, we are doing the best that we can. I think the good thing about this conversation and future conversations that we'll have is basically like to Quita's point, when you know better, you do better. So now that we have whatever differences we might have had in our generations, it's not until we get older that we actually see the results of such. So now that we know, hey, things could have been done differently to result in a different type of human being, we know better, we do better. We just keep having these conversations, and this is how we get to that point. So,
Good.
sorry.
Radiant.
To discuss mental health, I think it's good to know that it can be hard, and you can feel stuck within yourself and feel trapped in a mood where you may feel separated from God or separated from yourself or your family. But I think it's so comforting to know that despite our ever-changing feelings, we're surrounded by a never-changing God, whose faithfulness stays anchored through our waves of uncertainty, through our waves of emotions, and just remembering that our relationship with Him is not founded on us, it's founded on Him. And when you feel faithless and you feel uncertain, know that He still remains. I think to know that He doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but the power of love and a sound mind is so important. And just to know that you're imperfect. God didn't call us to be perfect, but just to know that His love never changes, and just to be grounded and anchored to that is amazing when it comes to mental health.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead and say yours. I'm sorry. Okay.
I said myself.
Just say it again. You should have said.
What else?
Okay. You already said that.
Yeah,
I'll say it.
yeah,
All right, so everyone goes through something in life. Some trials are tougher than others and can lead to mental health episodes. But if you can get the person help and they are receptive to it, that would be great. And it's another one of those things too. If you see something, you say something, and then let's continue to keep your mental health in check. Is what we need to do. So my sister going to share with our next session.
Okay, so the next section we have, the date is Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. And basically we're just gonna recap. We're actually putting a recap on everything.
So we're going to recap all of our episodes, do just a whole recap is what we're doing. Also, I want to thank our wonderful panel and give them, you guys did a great job. And
Excellent
if the audience can send up heart emojis for our panel, because they did such an excellent job. I want to thank our viewers for your participation in this as well. Again, please like, share, follow our page, subscribe to our Instagram. No, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's showing important support. This is the way that you guys can get the notifications and things like that. And again, like I said, we thank you guys. And like I said, again, continue to keep your mental health in check. And everyone have a good night, please. Thank you,
Yes.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you all.
See you. Bye, everybody. Part 2 coming.